Hi, Steve. Welcome to Belfast via Skype link. My name's Johanna. I'm the program manager of the Strand.
Hi, Steve. I'm Brendan, and we're very appreciative of you taking the time to speak to us all over this side of the
Thanks, John.
Atlantic.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well,
I was just going to say thanks to you guys, Johanna and Brandon. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for honoring Bill. It's amazing. 23 years later, people still interested in him. So appreciate that.
yeah.
We were just admiring all of the memorabilia that you have in the background there, and we were thinking the audience probably would like to see. We're in your office right now, and we've been chatting to you a little bit earlier on, so you showed us some great things in the room.
Yeah, I'll show you. Let me show you all real quick, because besides being Bill's brother, I'm also a big fan, and I collect things, and fans send me things, and and I'm very privileged to be able to have some of this. I'll show you a few things. So here's like my bookshelf, and it's all Bill stuff. Like all those CDs on the bottom have songs that are dedicated to Bill or inspired by Bill. There's all Bill's albums that have ever been released. You can see those. There's books that are written about Bill or have Bill's mentioned, and there's some artwork some people have done for me and sent. You can see that.
Yeah.
Over here, there's some more original artwork that probably not too many people have out there. I'm also a big Beatles fan, so there's all my Beatles stuff right there. And also over here, I know people. Up here, here's some Bill posters up here. There's a platinum album from Tool. Some of y'all may know Bill and Tool had an associate, the band Tool. Here's another rare Bill poster. And then here, very interesting. So there's the hat Bill wore in Revelations from the Dominion Theater. So, I'm very privileged to be able to be the curator of all of this stuff. And
fantastic.
And I take good care of it. And there's a lot more. That's just some of it. I got other closets full of stuff. And then I'm wearing one of my Bill shirts to sort of join y'all there as best I can, since I couldn't make it to Belfast in person. So
that's great.
Here we are. And thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
So welcome.
Thank you. So I think our first question is really, what has Bill's legacy been for the Hicks family and Bill's friends since his death?
Well, I think I answer, I'm also the one, I answer all the fan letters that come and everything, and I answer every one of them personally. They're not a form letter or anything. And what I generally tell people, though, is we're just completely amazed. We're very humbled by it all. We're very appreciative of it. We always thought Bill was something very special, but I think only looking back these last 23, coming up on 24 years, has it really hit home how broad his reach is and how many people he's impacting around the world. So, it's we're amazed at his legacy. We're proud of his legacy. We're privileged to be a part of it. And I think, I'm very reluctant to ever speak for Bill because he's not here. We don't know what he'd be doing or saying, but I'm pretty confident to say I think he would be blown away by all the attention that he receives now and the love and respect. Because as some of you know, and especially over here in the States, he wasn't as received as he wished he was with the message he was sending through his comedy. But now it seems like the world has caught up with that. And it's just very cool. It's very cool to be a part of it. I hear from people all over the world. And like for tonight, I can't believe I'm sitting here chatting with Belfast. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That here we are 23 and a half years later, and y'all are interested in Bill. And we always keep the focus on Bill. It's about Bill. It's not about us. We're just lucky to be here and enjoying the ride like everyone else is. So it's very cool.
Brilliant. And obviously this is part of Belfast Comedy Festival, and we were just wondering, do you involve yourself in other comedy festivals or respond to requests like our one to kind of take part in special events?
Yes, I will, as often as people would like me to. We don't like to push ourselves on people or set any kind of expectations or anything like that. But I think that people, fans, enjoy some sort of interaction with the family or friends and get a little insights maybe that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So yes, I offer myself up often for these things. They go on, every time around Bill's birthday in December or the day he died in February, there's usually events that are put on around the world. And we've actually, my mother and sister and I were the ones left in the family. We've actually gone, like last year, we were at a Bill tribute event in Milan, Italy, of all places. Yeah. They didn't speak any English and we don't speak any Italian, but somehow they love Bill over there. Yeah. And they had a tribute night with about 250 people.
Oh, great.
And, they translated back and forth and it went really well. So, we go when we can and we'll do things like this on Skype when we can, if people are interested. I've always said, I'll keep talking. I can go on and on about Bill and I'll keep talking about him as long as people are interested in hearing about him. So.
Well, here 23 years after his death, here we are, and with some more questions for you, Steve. And
sure.
One of the things that we wanted to ask was how important was music in Bill's life? You mentioned the Beatles there, and we could see the Abbey Road cover and stuff in the background. And I know that when we were speaking earlier, you mentioned Lo-Fi Troubadour. Can you tell us a bit about that and how important music was in his life?
I'll give you, for as young as I can remember, Bill probably 5, 6, 7 years old, and I'm 5 years older. So whenever, Bill was 5, I was 10, that kind of thing. We were always kind of into music. But what I remember really, really early, this is how far back his love of music went. When he was like 7 or 8 or 9 years old, for Christmas, he would ask for Elvis Presley records. And I always thought that was kind of a strange gift request for a 7, 8, or 9-year-old kid. But he was just fascinated with Elvis Presley and the whole spectacle of it all. And then as he got a little bit older, into his teens, he got into Kiss. I guess every teenager was probably into Kiss at some point. And then he got into guitarist, and Rory Gallagher he was a huge fan of Rory Gallagher. A guy over here, an American named Eric Johnson, who was an amazing guitarist. Stevie Ray Vaughan in Double Trouble, Jimi Hendrix. So he went through that phase. Yeah. And then he got into, as he got a little bit older, artists that had maybe more of a message, like Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. But Bill loved all kinds of music. For his shows, he always had some music as his intro music that brought him onto the stage, and his exit music for when he left the stage, when he played in clubs. And, that varied based on what he was listening to at the time. But it was always, and then Bill learned how to play the guitar. He was self-taught on the guitar. And he, in high school, he had a band. They called themselves, they were the first punk band, because it was like in 1974, 75, they were called Stress, was the name of the band. And it was him and 3 of his friends. And, there's some bootleg stuff out there on YouTube you might be able to find. We might release some of that one of these days. You never know. But Bill was a great guitar player. And then he formed another band with some friends later on called Marblehead Johnson. Y'all might have heard of that out there. And so maybe, and that's out of release right now, but maybe we'll put that out again. And then, Brendan, just as you were saying, Lo-Fi Troubadour. So after Bill died, this was years after Bill died, my mother found a shoebox in a shelf in the closet, and she opened up the shoebox, and it was all these cassette tapes of songs that Bill had recorded.
Yeah.
And just hundreds of these songs and hours and hours worth of recordings. And so we took 24 of the best ones, what I deemed to be the best ones. And we, this was a privilege I could have never imagined. And we took those cassette tapes to Abbey Road Studios and we remastered those tapes in Abbey Road with an engineer who had worked on some of the Beatles stuff. So Bill was a huge Beatles fan. I was a huge Beatles fan. And through Bill and for Bill, to honor Bill, we decided that'd be a good idea to go master those tapes in Abbey Road. And that was just a privilege of a lifetime. So that's where Lo-Fi Troubadour came from. And it's out there on the various various internet place to download, and also you can hear it out on YouTube and stuff. But anyway, so
I'm sure he
huge
would have
for
been,
Bill. Huge for Bill. So music.
Pardon me, Steve. I'm sure he would have been thrilled to
I'm
know
sorry.
that his big brother got that opportunity to go to Abbey Road.
Yeah, I think he would have. Yeah, I think he would have supported me on that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was. That was really a privilege. So.
Steve, what age was Bill when you all in the family realised that humour, comedy, was going to be important in his life?
Well, when he was, again, I keep thinking I was 5 years old. So when I was 16 or 7, so, he was 12 years old,
Mm-hmm.
13, 11. He would write jokes and slide them under my bedroom door at home. And I'd write notes on them and send them back to him under his bedroom door, and write things like, this is funny, or I don't get this, or, and I have no qualification. I was just an older brother, but, he was writing me these jokes, and I'd comment on them back and put them back under his bedroom door. And I didn't really know much more than that. But one day I was home from college. Maybe I was 18 or 19. So Bill was 13 or 14, something like that. And he invited me down to the comedy club in downtown Houston, Texas, where we were living. And so I went with some friends, and Bill was performing, and he was great. And it was amazing, because I had no idea that he was going down and performing at a comedy club. And he famously was sneaking out of his second floor bedroom window, hopping down the roof, and he'd hop the fence, and some friends of his who were old enough to drive, Bill wasn't even old enough to drive a car, they were waiting for him in a church parking lot behind our house, and Bill would hop in the car and they would drive him down to the comedy club downtown. And so very, very early on, and then in fact when Bill graduated from high school, a week later he said, I'm going to go to LA and be a comedian. So it's always been what he wanted to do. There was never really anything else.
Clear in his mind, by the sounds of it.
Yep.
So we have a question from the audience. So it comes from Marty Neal, and he would like to know how much unreleased Bill Hicks material there is out there, and if there is some, will it be released? You did mention some music there, but is there any footage or anything else that might be out there?
There's probably, I want to say 100 hours of audio and maybe 50 hours of video. Will they be released? I'm not sure about that, because the quality of them isn't always that great. These were, when Bill would perform in a club, like when you see a show like Relentless that you're seeing tonight, or Revelations, or any comedian's very produced shows, or musicians for that, bands for that matter, the lighting is perfect. They've done a dress rehearsal earlier in the evening and make sure it all looks perfect. Well, the remaining videos and audios that we have were just Bill performing in a club, and he would get someone to push record on the video machine or the tape machine or whatever, and he would just go, and sometimes he would step out of screen on the stage, because the video no one's moving the camera. So anyway, it's a long answer. There's a lot of hours left of unreleased material. Whether it'll come out or not, I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's worth putting out or not. I don't know. So we did put, I don't know if you're familiar with, and I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm not into advertising or marketing, but I will show you this. We put out a couple of years ago the Bill Hicks Complete Collection, that box set right there.
Yeah. And
in it, we did add 10 hours of unreleased videos and audio in there. So, I don't know if y'all have that, if everybody's interested, but there's some of that lesser quality but worth watching performances out there. So.
I suppose it's a pity. I mean, these days, even recording things off their mobile phone or us recording this Skype conversation, it's so much easier, and people have great camera quality in their pocket. So it's just a pity, I suppose, the time that he was here that we didn't have that technology as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of the shows, because again, he would pay someone, $10 or whatever, I don't know what he paid him, to push the record button, and then they'd go off and do their thing. And sometimes the videos or the audios, the tape runs out before Bill's performance ends. So, because these tapes were, the maximum they could be was like an hour long. And sometimes Bill would perform for, an hour and 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was. And so these shows just cut off at the very end. And, so.
A shame, really.
Yeah, so there's those sort of obstacles as to whether they'd be even interesting to put out or not. But
thanks, Steve. That's great. That's great. Thank you. There's another question from one of the audience, Neil Quinn. Where would Bill fit into today's socio-political landscape of millennials, snowflakes, safe spaces, trigger warnings, and the diktats of cultural Marxism?
What's the question? Do I need to know what all those are?
I'll read it again. There's a question mark after Marxism. Where would Bill fit into today's socio-political landscape?
Wow, it's a good question. I tend to not try to speculate where Bill would be, other than this, because he had so many other offers coming his way that last year before he died that I don't know where he would have ended up. But I think we can all rest assured that he'd still be kicking ass and questioning everything that didn't seem real or that was just hypocritical. All those kind of things that is what was in his comedy. I'm fairly confident he would have never lightened up on any of that. I would like to think that he would still be the individual that he was and would not be tagged with any of those labels. But I certainly appreciate that question and can see that. But I think that Bill was such an individual and steadfast in his beliefs. I think he would have kept on that path. I don't think that he would have. I just don't think there would have been something that he could have been labeled as on any of those. And again, I got to tell everyone, these are just my opinions, right? I'm no expert on anything. I don't know, but that's what I think. I think he would have. I don't know what his venue would have been. I don't know what his forum would be. But I think that he'd still be out there railing against the injustices as he sees them and sharing his truth with everyone out there. So
thanks so much, Steve.
I hope that answered your question.
That's a great answer. Thank you,
Marty.
There's just two other questions, Steve. The first is we have a quote from when Bill played in Belfast, and if I can read this out to you. Played Belfast, Ireland last week. Never been to Belfast, Ireland. Played to 900 screaming and adoring fans in a turn-of-the-century theatre that Oscar Wilde performed in. Only to come back to America, the country I have toured ceaselessly for 15 years, to play Adolf's Comedy Bunker in Idaho to 25 apathetic people, strangers one and all, who stared at me like a dog that had just been shown a card trick. Do you remember anything else he mentioned about Belfast or Ireland, northern or southern?
Well, that he loved it, and I'll tell you about that. That show that you're mentioning was in Austin, Texas, where I lived at the time, and Bill would let me record some of his shows. So I was there that night when he said that, and that clip is out there on the internet. So you can, it's on YouTube. So I don't know what you'd exactly have to search on to find that, but you can find Bill saying that. And really what he was speaking to, he had just come back from a tour of the UK, Scotland, Ireland, and England. And all of his shows were sold out in these 500 to 2,000 seat theaters. And yet he came back here to the United States with, as he would say, 25 apathetic people staring at him like a dog had just been shown a card trick. So, he loved the reception that he got over there in the UK, those last 2 years that he toured in 91 and 92. And I always have described that as where I really felt that his confidence level went way up because he finally realized there was an audience for his message out there, that he wasn't getting the reception over here in the U.S., his home country, but he was, without putting too hard of a spin on it, but he was just adored over there in and he loved it. And so I don't know of any other stories about Belfast, but I tell you what, y'all have gone down in history as making an indelible impression on Bill. Because and I think we've tried to track down that theater. Do you have a Queen's Theater there? Is that possible?
We've been discussing this.
Oscar Wilde was?
Yeah, we've been wondering.
Yeah, I've had a friend, I wish I could remember who it was now. A friend of mine said that he had saw Bill when he was over here. They had maybe mentioned that it was something to do with Queen's University. They have a very old university building, which has a nice hall in it, but it wouldn't fit that many people. And they do have more of like a bunker kind of dark space as a bar. So, but then Brendan and I were talking, and he had mentioned that we have this Grand Opera House, which sounds very much like what he described. But then we probably thought it would take us a long time to kind of surface that up. So we will try and find it out.
I've looked also. I bet we have a suitcase that has every receipt of Bill's since he ever started performing.
Wow.
And all of his travels, because being a comedian, you're sort of self-employed, so you got to do your own taxes and keep all of your receipts and do your expenses and all of that. So I guess one of these days, if we ever go through all of those, we could find that out as well. But I'm not sure where. But I tell you what, he loved all of the UK. He loved Belfast. He loved London, and it was a huge. It was hugely impactful. I mean, I think when you watch Revelations from the Dominion Theatre in London, even though it's in England for you guys in Belfast, but just his confidence and his stage presence up there, I think it fed off of the enthusiasm he had just received from all these sold-out shows across the UK. So,
and
brilliant.
Something that you had mentioned earlier on was obviously we're watching Relentless tonight. That you said that there was something interesting that happened at the end of this recording that the audience wouldn't know from just watching the DVD of it. And if you could tell us that story.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story. So at the very end of Relentless, so you got to stay awake and watch the whole show. At the very end of it, as Bill is getting ready to leave the stage, he's taking his bow, and he turns around and he sort of gestures upwards towards the back of the stage, and he says something. Okay, so what is it that he says? Can you figure out what it is that he says? And then here's what he says, and I'm going to tell you what he says, and here's why. So when Bill would record, would do his those performances, he would have music that he would play for the introduction to bring him on stage, and then exit music for when he went off stage. So the music that he chose that night, when that show was recorded in that theater, that was in Montreal, Canada, it was the Beatles song, Tomorrow Never Knows. Relax your mind and float downstream, that song with those lyrics. But when the DVD came out, which you're going to be watching tonight, they couldn't afford the licensing fees for a Beatles song. So you'll hear the intro and exit music is some generic Jimi Hendrix sounding music, and it's not Jimi Hendrix because they couldn't afford those rights either. It's just some generic sounding guitar music. But in the theater that night, what the audience was hearing as Bill left the stage was the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. So what Bill turns around and acknowledges is the Beatles, and that's what he says there at the very end. So just a little tidbit, little behind-the-scenes thing there that you may find interesting.
Thanks so much for that, Steve. It's a great little detail.
So we just have our last question, which is if you yourself could ask Bill one question now, what would it be?
Well, I tell you, one thing that came to mind is kind of a joke, but I'm going to tell you, and then I'll try to answer something serious, okay? So, Bill did mushrooms, okay, and expanded his mind, squeegeed his third eye, okay? Oh, I never did them with Bill. He wanted me to. He took me out in the desert one night with a bag of mushrooms and wanted me to do it, but I chickened out. I just would do it. I'm just much more conservative than Bill is. But anyway, our father, who has now passed away, but he was a master gardener. So he was into plants and everything. So Bill and I made a bet. Bill bet me that he could get my father to do mushrooms with him on the basis of my father was into plants and he would be interested in that. Well, y'all never met my father. He was a great man, but I can guarantee you he was not going to do mushrooms with Bill or with anybody, okay? So I bet Bill $200 that you'll never get our father to do mushrooms with you, and he didn't. So my first question to Bill is, where's my goddamn $200, okay? I won that bet. I want my $200. All right. So there's that. My other one would be, I think it would be on a series. I said, Bill, aren't you pleased with how everyone loves and respects you? Has so much love and respect now. Not that he didn't have it. You know, Bill, we hear stories about Bill, and he was just, and I know, I mean, if anyone knew him, he was just such a good guy. But one of the things that did cause him frustration was that he felt he had a message worth hearing, that he chose the creation of comedy to share that message, and it wasn't always received. Truly kind of ahead of his time. And I think I would ask him his feelings now if he could see everything that's going on and that sort of worldwide love and respect and admiration for how he presented himself out there. I'd ask him what he felt about that. So.
Well, Steve, that's a perfect way to finish, and I want to thank you so much from the Belfast Comedy Festival and the Strand Arts Centre. We're so appreciative that you've taken the time. I'll leave the last word to Johanna.
Thanks very much, and we hope you find out where the show was in Belfast, and maybe if you're ever in Belfast, you can come and visit us as well. That's great.
I would love to. I need to get over there. I haven't made it, but I need to get there, and I will definitely look you up. So, brilliant. And y'all know where to reach me if you need anything. Let me know. I try to be accommodating, and just love to be the representative to help represent Bill, and it's a real privilege. And I thank y'all for doing what you're doing, showing Relentless tonight. So,
thanks very much.
Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Take good
Thank
care.
y'all. See you.
Bye.
Bye everybody there.
Ciao.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.